Hey, happy noontime, everybody. I'm Jessie Perkins, Executive Director of the Bethel Area Chamber of Commerce, and I am very excited to welcome you to today's edition of the Lunchbox Zoom series with the Mahoosic Sustainable Tourism Committee. And please, if you're not speaking, make sure that you're on mute and we don't pick up on your background noise. And also, you heard from the Zoom lady just a few seconds ago that this session is being recorded. This is the 11th time we've done this year, and I think we should all be pretty proud of being so consistent given everything else that's going on. Just this morning, a little anecdote, I walked into my office and a woman happened to already be in the lobby here at our visitors center. And without any prompting, she said, I really like this Mahoosic Way pledge. And she was like taking a picture of the poster. So I was like, wow, this is a win. I was pretty pleased by that. And I thought you guys would be too. I'd like to welcome anyone joining us for the first time and anyone particularly interested in today's topic. I think that this is a very timely, we've known for years this is an issue, but it's kind of like reaching a point where everybody wants to do something. We're not quite sure what that is, but the enthusiasm is there. And so let's figure out where to go. We all know someone who's affected by our tight housing supply. We all wish we could hire or keep employees, but they're finding housing to be challenging. Or many, I'm sure, have had trouble finding housing yourselves. This has been an issue for years, but we know various pandemic-related factors have made supply tighter than ever. And so today's purpose is not to grovel in the many examples that we could point to, but to share who's doing what we do and don't know, who's willing to be involved. Spoiler alert, I think you're all going to need to be involved, but this is an attempt to get that conversation going, and thanks for your willingness to be here today. Brief overview of the agenda, a couple minutes, I'll toss it to Mike Wilson with the Northern Forest Center for an overview of the topic and what we hope to accomplish. Then we'll move to Loretta Powers, the Bethel Town Manager, speaking to the role of municipalities and some of the conversations that our core town managers have started to have. And then we will move along to Neil Scanlon and Sam Whyland, the recruiting and retention manager at Sunday River. And Neil is the VP of
Finding his mute button, VP of Finance.
That's what I thought. Okay, and also Selectman with the Town of Bethel. So definitely has finger on the pulse, and we'll talk about Sunday River's current strategies and so where to go from here. And then we definitely expect a robust discussion beyond that. So again, thank you all for being here, and I will toss it to Mike.
Thanks, Jessie. Thanks, everyone. Again, I'm Mike Wilson. I'm a Senior Program Director with the Northern Forest Center, and we're glad to be playing a role helping to coordinate some of the overall Mahoosic Way work. This is also an issue that, as an organization, we see as really critical and fundamental to the future of this region. That the housing issue that we're talking about here today is not one that is limited to Bethel or the Mahoosic area, as I'm guessing most of you know. This is a statewide, this is a regional issue. And it's one that is not, it's also not limited to kind of what we think of as destination communities like Bethel or Rangeley or Greenville, where there's a lot of second home development. We see this issue, and as an organization, we've been involved in other communities. There's a whole different dynamic in a mill community where they still have a housing challenge, but it's almost the mirror image. They have too many houses. They have a ton of houses. They're all run down. There's no quality, decent places for people to live in some cases. But and we've had some experience in those. But this dynamic in how to address this question in a recreation destination community is just really different, and we're really encouraged by the interest in this and the collaboration we've seen among, again, the idea of regional collaboration that we've seen coming from the towns and their willingness to lean into this together. So it's a tricky one compared to what we've seen in other places, but we think that this place in particular has a certain critical mass interest and talent and capacity to really lean into this and see if we can come up with some creative approaches to how to address this issue. So I think it's, when we first started talking about the Moosic Way and sustainable tourism in the framework of the Destination Academy, I think a lot of the concern was, how do we avoid this, the boomtown bust? And this is a critical piece of that. And looking forward to, again, hearing from the towns and hearing from folks up at Sunday River, but also just hearing the ideas and thoughts that other folks on the call have to share. So I'll hand it back to Jessie and she'll move us through. You're muted, Jessie.
Gotta unmute myself, classic. Thanks, Mike. Next, we will toss it to Loretta Powers, the town manager of Bethel. And we've had already a busy week of meeting. We had a meeting among the town managers just yesterday talking about this issue. So Loretta, let's hear your perspective, please.
Well, it's a big one. No, it's not just seasonal housing we need. We need it for year round. We want families to come here, and families like to come here, but they can't afford to work here, live here, and all the other homes are either Airbnbs or they're just not available to them. Being, like I said yesterday at our meeting, everybody wants to make money, so we get that, but we don't need the low income housing. We need the affordable housing for everybody. And I brought this up at one of our managers' meetings. Vern hadn't heard too much down there in Woodstock, but Greenwood had heard a little, and Nuri doesn't, they have the skiway, so everything is booming up that way as different. It's a different setup. Every town's got a little bit different, but we definitely need something. But Bethel itself doesn't own a lot of property to be able to do this. So we're going to have to figure out a way to get people to work together, to figure out a space, whether it be some sort of incentive to get us all moving forward to make it happen. I mean, I think it was yesterday, was it Scarborough that was doing a workforce housing thing that I saw on the news. So, and Jessie sent out an email that she had got from somebody that had worked on these type of projects before. And I thought that was great information, because we've got to start doing something for people to come here that want to live here and not just visit. And I mean, tourism is great. That's what keeps us all going. I get it. But we also need the workforce, and everybody's hurting around here, whether it be restaurants or I'm sure the skiway needs help. Everybody needs help. So we, at the town level, we've got job openings. So we've all got to work together to get this moving forward. And I think we're doing that. I think we're on the right path with all the different help from Mike and Jessie and all the towns, and anybody that's willing to say, hey, I've done this, or I know somebody that's knows a little something about this.
So true. And that's what we need to understand, like each other's skills and limitations. Like we need to understand, do the town own land, or do we need to figure out how to buy some land, or how do we think of various strategies that don't involve buying land right away? Because that's obviously a pretty long-term solution. Are there other short-term solutions to increase the density or encourage, people to rent out rooms in their houses or whatever? There's long list of things that we could be doing. So again, understanding who has which assets, as from the town perspective, it could easily be, what are the ordinances that we need to do? How can you access some state or federal funding that is only available to towns, or what is it that the town uniquely can do, and what can Greenwood do and Nuri do versus what Bethel can do? So trying to understand that stuff. Okay, I'm talking too much. Next, can we hear from Neil and or Sam from Sunday River?
Absolutely, Jessie, thanks. And thanks, Red. I need to figure out how to do a background like you do, rather than my boring wall. For those of you who don't know me, as Jessie mentioned earlier, I'm Neil Scanlon, VP of Finance at Sunday River, and then also on the Bethel Board of Selectmen. Have a couple other folks from Sunday River on the call today as well. Karolyn Castaldo, who many of you know, and is our Director of Communication. And then Brian Heon, our General Manager. And most importantly, who I'll turn this over to in a minute, is Sam Whyland, our Recruiting and Retention Manager, who's been doing a great job and has really dove deep into this process. And it's interesting, the last couple of days I've been on a couple of different calls with folks and had some different conversations, and it really is a community-wide issue and concern. And I like the way Mike puts it, it's attainably priced housing that we're looking for. We've done a lot of steps over the last few years for kind of our seasonal team members and the single type of seasonal team worker. But we've come to the realization that we really need to do something for the young professionals. And it is a year-round issue, as Loretta mentioned as well. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Sam.
Thanks, Neil. It's nice to see you all, and I apologize I'm calling in from my phone. It's actually my day off, and I'm out shopping for my new apartment because I, a young professional, have been essentially homeless since July when I took the job at Sunday River. So if that doesn't kind of explain our situation, the recruiter is homeless, then I think nothing will. So Sunday River has done an incredible job of providing dorm-style housing, which attracts seasonal workers, younger people, people who are more transient, interested in jumping from resort to resort or town to town. We've taken over what used to be the Norseman. We now call it the Mountain Village Lodge. And we have 17 beds in the inn, which is the left side of that building, and 44 beds in the motel, which is the right side of that building. And those will be filled probably by December. We've also taken over the Mountain View Apartments, which some people know as the hostel. That has 24 beds and fills up very quickly as well. And we've taken over what used to be the Snowcap dorms, renamed them the Snowcap Youth Lodge, and we'll be using that for our J1 program, which this year, to kind of combat the employment issues we're having, we're going to have 106 J1 students, which is the largest group we've ever hosted. So total, we are offering our employees 302 beds, which is a quarter of the workforce that we need. So it's pretty impressive that we're doing that. The problem, and I'll echo Loretta and Neil, is that we don't have moderate income housing. We don't have family and especially pet-friendly housing. And I have conversations, I would say daily. People call up, they're very excited to work with us, and then they say, I have a dog, and my heart sinks because I have a dog and 2 kids, and I've been homeless for 6 months. So we really need to be gearing towards young professionals. They are less transient, more likely to stick around for year-round employment or more predictable seasonal employment. It helps with retention. And we really need to be thinking about the radius of the mountain, at least our company does. Anything further than half an hour we've found is really kind of prohibitive because our employees are traveling in the worst conditions every winter. If we start looking at Norway or Rumford, unless we have shuttles running on a schedule, people are really hesitant to commit to that kind of commute. And we've also found that offering housing on the Mountain Explorer route is a good way to kind of bill ourselves as a green business. We're offering essentially public transportation in a really rural community, which looks good, and it is good for the planet and for us. So that's kind of what we've been doing. We have a huge need still for that moderate income housing, but we've really done a good job of providing the dorm style housing.
Great, thanks for that update, Sam.
Of course.
And so glad you found an apartment. But you know, your story is a perfect example. It's not, there's no one type of person that is, you know, that is suffering from this. You know, there's a lot of gaps that need to be filled for a lot of different types of people. And that's why I point to availability being the key issue here. And affordability almost doesn't matter if nothing exists. So kind of leave it at that. And I also want to point out, and I said this to Neil yesterday, that this is not just a Sunday River problem, and you know, this is, every business could probably use 2 to 10 employees. And so another thing that I'm really concerned about as the chamber representing so many small businesses and including, you know, on up to Sunday River certainly being the largest, but how do we create access for these smaller businesses or towns and nonprofits, municipalities that are trying to hire? And we know that there's tons of workforce attraction opportunities out there. You know, how do we get more of this type of people into the workforce? How do we recruit internationally? How do we do this? How do we that? But honestly, like me personally, I have a hard time saying those things or promoting those types of things with a straight face until we can start addressing this issue. Because where do we put them if we try to attract them? So we could all go on and on. You know, we have, I'd like to also point out some of the strengths that we have. Some of the strengths that we have are incredibly, almost nearly year-round tourism economy. So many places that are dealing with this are very one season or the other. And, you know, we've made so many strides. This should be an asset. This should be an opportunity for people to have year-round tourism and hospitality oriented jobs. We have gotten there. So that's a good thing. Another good thing that I think that other locations would long for, who are, you know, other locations that are in a similar boat as us, is that we don't have too many rules. You know, we're not contending with super restrictive zoning at all. We're not contending with, you know, some of these like really entrenched rules that are hard to combat, where you have to like go change a bunch of ordinances, and then, you know, that sort of just extends the process. We certainly have codes and planning boards, and I'm not super well versed in this, so please override me if you know more than I do about this. But I think relative to other communities facing this, we actually have some assets here. What we need and what we might challenge all of you all to think about is expertise and you know, who are the developers that are really working in this space, and who knows which funding sources to go after, and who can point to the strategies that are worked. And we also need patience, because we know that we start something today, it's going to be a while before it really pans out into some serious impact. So anyway, thank you to our speakers today. And I do want to leave kind of some extra time for discussion, because we do have a good crowd here today with a lot of, and, you know, knowing you all, I know there's a lot of different perspectives out there. So any further thoughts from any of our speakers before I kind of open up the discussion? Okay.
I guess I would just say a couple things. I think there is an opportunity. I think this is clearly not an isolated issue, and in truth, there's a lot of state and federal money moving around these days. So really thinking about how to position, you know, understanding, you know, what those sources of funding are and how to position projects to potentially take advantage of that, I think is important and a good opportunity going forward. And I'll just add, just from an organizational standpoint, this is something that the Northern Forest Center has been looking at for a couple of years. We've had a little bit of experience up in Millinocket. We're doing a project in Lancaster, New Hampshire, and this is something we see as there's some space for creative thinking in this space, and that's something we're interested in, both thinking about ways to bring different types of capital investment, you know, impact investment capital into this space, philanthropic dollars into this space. So it's just a really interesting time, and partly that has to do with the pressure that everyone is seeing everywhere. But it does feel like there's some opportunity, but it will require the right folks coming together and figuring out how to pursue that. So yeah, I'm really interested in any examples that folks can share of places that have done this successfully, in their areas, things you see locally as barriers to work in this particular space. Any thoughts others have about funding investment sources for this kind of work?
Could I jump in again?
Go ahead, Sam. Yes, I did say, go ahead, speakers first.
This is not representative of Sunday River's viewpoint. This is very much me as a homeless person looking around for a few years and growing up in the area and loving it. I've always wondered how we can combine stewardship of the land with this problem and promote a greener, more sustainable lifestyle, a more community-based lifestyle, especially since COVID has happened with this problem. And instead of just popping up an apartment complex like everybody else ever, can we build a community? Can we do something like a tiny house village or a sustainable shared garden community? Something that not only will benefit the community, benefit the land, benefit our business, but also possibly gain us national attention as a town and as a business because it's different and because it's moving in the right direction. And I think there's funding out there for this kind of project because it's, I don't want to say cutting edge, but it's leading. It's moving in a direction that people want to be going in.
Sam,
That's
I know that our land trust, and I don't see any folks necessarily, not staff, but if anyone involved with our land trust or in the Woods and Trails, which can function as a land trust, it does own land. They have expressed the ability or willingness to explore being landholders there. And there's just so many interesting models. So I'm so glad you said that. Thank you. Barbara.
I want to say something really quick, and a front burner thing just happened here, so I want to jump. But Sam, hi, nice to meet you. And there is some work happening down in the town of Norway in the Oxford Hills area through the Center for an Ecology-Based Economy. And they have a working group. They call it their shelter working group. And this is one of the subjects that they talk about all of the time with all of the parameters that you just talked about. So I would check that out. And I think that, collaborating and talking to other communities is one of the things that we can all learn from to what we can do here. But I love that that model, and it's being talked about in other places too. And I'll be right back.
Thanks, Barbara. I know I saw some other hands out there that I haven't called on yet. Bob.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I heard mention about Airbnb, so I'm just curious, are short-term rentals a problem in the Bethel area? And if so, what has the community done, whether it's through local, organizations and or the town itself?
Anyone want to touch that?
Sure. We haven't done anything about Airbnb.
No, it's definitely a part of the conversation. Thanks for bringing
It
it
is. We talked about it a little yesterday. Airbnbs are scary. We understand why people do them. In a way, they're a great thing. A lot of it has to do with safety issues on our end when we kind of look at it through the town. But it would be a full-time job for somebody to deal with Airbnbs, to whether it be inspect them or whatever, I think it would be kind of crazy to even try to touch it. But it has been, we keep looking at it. We try to pay attention, and I understand when people travel, Airbnb is perfect. I mean, I've heard wonderful things from many, many people about it, whether it be from here or elsewhere. And I think it does hurt the housing here for, what we're looking at, but I get why people do it.
Yeah, and I had been in a townhome complex over in Waterville Valley, and there the association said no short-term rentals, just because they wanted to maintain the flavor of the community.
Loretta, there have been a couple of attempts to have this discussion about possible ordinances, like, several years ago now, well before the pandemic. Speaking from a chamber perspective, we have members on, members who are traditional hotels, lots of members who represent vacation rental agencies. And so we've really maintained a neutral position on it. But personally, I think the conversation has changed a lot in the past few years. I think Airbnb has not, I think it has actually fueled a lot of building around here and allowed people who might not quite have been able to afford or not quite be willing to invest in a second home to make that leap. So I think it has fueled building in that way. I think, yeah, there's definitely a period of time where it was eating away at the sort of the more traditional village apartments. And I live right in the village too, so I see it among my neighbors and friends. And but now I think even the Airbnbs have become more full-time year-round people as people have been kind of moving here permanently. And whether that lasts beyond the next couple of years is, hopefully pandemic will fade. Well, hopefully we'll see. But I think even the Airbnb conversation has become much grayer than ever. And certainly it has fueled an increase in tourism around here, my personal belief, because we haven't built any new hotels around here lately. But yet we know that our tourism has increased. So those are my thoughts. No one position or the other, but yeah, it's certainly part of the conversation. Mike is chatting with me, pointing out that we have some hands raised. I think we saw Brian Heon, if you've had your hand up there. Look at that, you got a little yellow hand. Okay, I think go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate being involved with this, and I don't know a lot of you, but Jessie, nice to see your face. I see Wade's name, and Mike, we visited this morning, so thanks for this opportunity. I think it's an interesting discussion, and one that this will be my 25th year in the ski industry, and I've lived in 4 or 5 different ski towns. And when I say ski town, I think this has been an ongoing issue since when I started in the ski industry in 1998. It's really when I started in Park City, Utah. I know Neil has experience in Park City. At that point in time, this has been an ongoing, as I call it, ski town issue for years. And I think that there are a lot of towns like that have really thought outside the box when it comes to this. Park City is one. I know it's on the other side of the United States, but they have really battled this with a community housing and a way to, at the time, it was a community housing board, right? It was almost before Craigslist and things like that when I moved to town, and you went to a central location to find housing and do exchange housing and for roommates. I mean, that was when you moved to town, that's where you went to find that housing. And there were a lot of options there. That community took it to the next level. They built some housing. I don't know how they funded it. I'd be happy to reach out to some connections there. It was housing that was built. It was set at a lower price, and it could only appreciate 2% a year. And so it would transactionally, it wouldn't grow as houses tend to do in ski towns, like we're seeing here in Bethel, with the value of homes just going up dramatically. So I think there are a lot of models out there that we could potentially learn from a little bit. So I'd be happy to help this committee get some of those, and maybe we research and say it's not for us, but at least we learn potentially something out of the process. So.
Thank you, Brian. I think that there's a lot we could do to learn from others and not invent wheels. And also Western ski towns have there's many canaries in the coal mine. There's situations that we'd like to avoid perhaps. So yes, the more research, the more examples we can find, the better. I feel like once you work anywhere in the ski industry, you're all hooked up to all these ski towns. You start to pay attention, you have friends come and go and move around to other ski towns. And so you start to learn more about them. And I've got a few friends who in other towns who have been doing some interesting things as well. It's another rabbit hole. Thank you, Brian. I think Bonnie has also been waiting to jump in here.
Sure.
Bonnie.
Yeah, you have all experienced what I've experienced with the Airbnbs, that they are outbidding people like Sam, who probably has bid on any number of small houses in the village and been outbid by someone from away who then gets the house and then turns it into an Airbnb. So my one little suggestion is, could we have this conversation with the realtors as well. I know that they are, their business is to make a profit on selling houses, but they also want this community to be rich and filled with children for our schools, et cetera. So I would want to bring the realtors into the conversation. That, and then you said there was no one here from a land trust. Well, I'm here from a land trust.
I didn't,
and
mean-
I would
as soon as I
say-
said it, I knew it was the wrong thing to say. I'm sorry.
I would say farming is changing tremendously as we are going forward. And there aren't the big herds of cows anymore that used to need a whole lot of pasture. And I'm wondering if some of the farmers who might relook at the holdings that they have might consider Sam's idea of some kind of, I don't know, a tiny house village sounds a little tiny, but some kind of a village setting for people to buy houses. I love that idea. Okay, done. And I have to run. I'm really sorry. I don't want to miss the rest of the conversation, but.
Thank you, Bonnie. I think that land trust angle is there's, again, tons of examples that we could start to look to. Land trusts are getting more creative all the time. And if there's a way to sort of have unique land ownership model and leasing homes, I mean, that's another example we've started to see across the country. Lots of options. Having great discussion here. Anyone else? I'm trying really hard to see all your little hands on my little screen. Tony, go right ahead.
Well, I'll just share with you, what many of you may know, and it's in the background I have here, is that we've been working for a few years to put a housing project in Bethel, and our original intent a couple of years ago was to target both workforce, and there was the Aging in Place initiative that Bethel was recognized for. Just want to share with you that 2 years ago, the cost to build that project behind me was high. In the past 2 years, that prices to build those 38 units has increased about $1 million. So this is a private equity investment in Bethel to build housing, and prices are very high right now. So I just want to share that with you. And again, as much as we had hoped to be targeting workforce development and building something for the community, it costs a lot to build these days. So I just share that with you.
No doubt, Tony. No doubt. Yeah. And that really points to, it's funny, like we see this as a workforce issue, but part of the problem, part of the workforce that's missing is people to build, right? We know that if you want to start building, you're looking at quite a length of time until, if you were to start today, when someone could actually start doing that. So thanks for that perspective, Tony. I really appreciate you making the appearance today. I see Wade's hand up, a little orange hand. Are you there, Wade?
Yeah, Jesse, can you hear me okay? I'm got a very weak connection.
So far, yes.
Okay, I just pointing to Bethel's assets, we are, compared to Park City or some other Western ski towns, still a very small community. And so, to have a statistically significant impact, we may not, need to create as many units as you would in a larger community. So I do think that's worth sharing, but I'm curious if anyone has given any thought as to what the actual need is and how many units would actually have an impact on the current situation.
That is an extremely good question. We're probably going to need to figure out that kind of data if we want to go after any real grants that are looking to make an impact here.
And I don't have exact numbers for Sunday River. I can say generally, we're offering 300 dorm style beds. On the busiest, most employed season, we can do 1,500 employees. And in the summer, we run between 150 and 350. So that's year-round employees. So doing that math, maybe 1,000 workers. They don't all need houses, but that's the pool that we're looking to employ. If I had to do a rough number, I'd say maybe 10% are, actively looking to move to the area. But that is a very, very guess-based answer.
Yeah, the trouble that we run into a lot of times when we're trying to think of statistics related to this community, it's like there's a couple of, we have our anchor institutions, of course, Sunday River being one, where it's like, okay, those are easy to calculate. But we have, again, so many small businesses with like lots of little needs. How do we calculate that? And so maybe we do need to employ someone to take a real survey, and that may go a long way. So Matt Sagliano comments says, rather than restricting short-term rentals, why not come up with a plan to incentivize the owners to rent to the workforce? The Airbnbs aren't going anywhere. Yeah, and I don't think anyone is planning to try to make Airbnb go anywhere. But yeah, Matt, are you still here? You want to expound on that?
I am. I just have a slightly noisy background, and apologies,
Okay.
I don't have video up. The point I'm making in that is not to be any level of combative, but Airbnbs aren't going anywhere. So why not incentivize the people that are buying these homes and can afford them, and incentivize them in such a way that we can bring workforce in and have housing for them, whether that's kickbacks or discounts or something that the community can provide for the owners of these places. And maybe that will allow us to bring more of that workforce in rather than struggle to find things. They now know that they have a pool of 100 different places that they can go, and the owners themselves get incentivized to rent to someone that would help the community. It just seems like it's an easy middle ground. Just a matter of coming up with what that incentive program looks like.
Yeah, if anyone can get the juices flowing and sees any examples of something like that, I think that's certainly good fodder to consider. This is also new, right? This is all like 110 years old, and there's just so much else going on. So many trends have just changed so quickly. I hear someone try.
I know oh, sorry, I keep interrupting.
Go ahead, Sam. Go ahead.
One of the benefits of having a Sunday River rental property right now is that the mountain pays the property, and then we take the rent out of our employees' paychecks. So it is guaranteed rent every month for the property owner. And so it would actually be a more reliable rental model for these people renting than having to running an Airbnb to constantly be making sure that they're getting paid. And so we just need to start communicating that if that's something that Airbnb owners would be open to. It's just a reliable way to have a rental income through us. So not necessarily a financial incentive, but definitely a reliability incentive.
That's really interesting. Is that something that you're currently offering to like the general public who may or may not have?
No, and we haven't.
Okay, we'll keep that within the group here.
But our properties that we do rent, the Old Norseman, the Mountain Village Inn, and the hotel and the hostel, those are all, the property owners know that they're getting X number of dollars every single month on the day it's due because we're paying them. And I would imagine Airbnb owners would be interested in that.
That's excellent idea.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that is an interesting model. Like, can that maybe perhaps almost any business can do? Can a business prepay a certain landlord for a season and then essentially take rent out of the employee's paycheck? It's an employee retention opportunity, and it's certainly an interesting model. I like these ideas of filling in the gaps, because not only is it working with the resources that we already have, but those types of ideas can be like immediate and not dependent on us, buying a big piece of land and trying to build somewhere.
Jessie, I wonder if as a way of again, I think there's a bunch of us who are taking some notes here, different ideas, but just as a way of, as folks, when we get off the line, if folks are thinking about this and they have questions, new creative ideas, observations of different barriers, on the Mahoosic Way website, on the contact us page, there's actually a page there where you can send in notes and comments. And again, recognizing this issue as one of the Mahoosic Way sustainable tourism pillars, recognizing that as part of the regional collaboration process we've been trying to support through this effort, town managers are meeting, somewhat periodically to dig into issues, including this one. And we've been talking about some ideas of ways to reach out to others in the kind of the development building community to dig into this a little deeper. I just really encourage folks to just go to the Mahoosic Way website, which you should go to anyway. And if you haven't taken the pledge, while you're there, take the pledge. And on the contact us page, it's a simple name, email address, and there's a space to drop comments and ideas in there. We haven't used it a lot, but this seems like a topic that is pretty dynamic, a lot of ideas and space for creativity in this space here. So I think if we could start to use that as a way of starting to gather different ideas and input them into some of the other kind of more formal conversations that are going on in the area, that would be great.
Great. Yeah. So any other hands raised out there? Does anyone have any recommendations for next steps or things that you've been inspired to do or are willing to do?
This is Liz. This is fabulous. I agree, Mike. I'm sitting here just scribbling notes. Thank goodness nobody can see my page in front of me. Sorry, my video's not on. Well, what I just wrote down was these out of town landlords. Nothing wrong with them, but I see them over here. The Airbnb owners, these people who have bought these new homes. I ran into a lot of them at where I work in the summer, and finding ways to connect them to issues in our local community. I can't imagine they're going to be. It's an income they need. They're being a landlord. I would imagine if we invite them somehow to get involved in local, I'm going to use the word issues, it may not be the right one, that relationship can only hopefully invite and grow them to think differently, maybe. I say this all with a huge disclaimer that I don't have an Airbnb. I respect anybody who has it, and I want to understand a little bit more about that investment. I might come across as stereotyping landlords right now as not being connected. I'm sure many are out of town, but these people scooping up these homes and putting them as Airbnbs, I'd love for them to understand this. And I'm not sure they're necessarily going to be on our lunchtime Zoom. So how can we deliver that information to them without them being a local community member? Thanks for listening.
I have an easy answer for that as somebody who's been on Airbnbs contacting people constantly to ask if they'll rent to me. You get on Airbnb and you do a direct message to every single local owner and say, hi, I'm the recruiter at Sunday River. I'd love to start a conversation about this. And I don't think it would be that hard. And then you get an email contact list and you start setting up meetings and conferences. And I think they'd all be interested because they have an investment in this area and our business as well.
It's so crazy, it just might work. So Sam, you've done this and you have all these contact information already, and you have a core group.
I've been doing it as a desperate mother of two little kids. Now I can do it as the professional from Sunday River, and I think it might come across a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly an angle, coming up with a package of ideas and incentives to those people who live here year round. There's not going to be any one answer to this. Wow. We are butting up against our allotted time here, and as I expected, so many good ideas and an excellent turnout and willingness to to engage. I really, really appreciate that. Like I said earlier, it's not going to be any one thing. We absolutely need nonprofits and business and the municipalities and individuals to come together. That's the sort of the strength, I think, of this Hoosick Sustainable Tourism Committee so far, is that we have had good representation from all of that, and if we stay in touch, we'll actually start to make some progress. I hope that this inspires you to know that if you come across something really interesting of something that your peers are doing in this department, that you can share it with the rest of us, and eventually we'll figure out how to coalesce. I know Mike and the Northern Forest Center team is working really hard to have personal conversations with many of you. And that's going to continue. Certainly, if you don't know who else to share it with me, and we'll try to keep this snowball rolling. I know we're about to enter into a very busy time here too, so please, lean on me if you have a good idea, if you come across some good ideas and you need to share it and need to get people together, like that's what we are here for. So Jessie@bethelmaine.com. Again, really appreciate all these faces and boxes on the screen today. This has been recorded and put on our YouTube page and for the chamber, and share it, please do. So.
Hey, Jesse, this is Wade. I'm sorry, I had my hand up, but can I just say one thing before you get off the call?
Sure.
And that, as I've talked to people in the community a little bit about this issue, I think it's really important for the 22 or 23 of us that are on this call to be really careful about the semantics of this issue, and that if you say affordable housing or if you say low-income housing, hackles are going to go up, and we're going to lose support instantly. And so just attention to the language around this, like the language of workforce housing really matters. And so when we go out and we talk about this issue, let's just all agree that we're talking about workforce housing, and then I think it'll be much easier to garner support as we go forward.
That is true, and that's something I've heard before, is that the word affordable housing is actually becomes associated with a set of federal standards about what that means, and it's actually not quite what we're trying to do here. We want available housing, and I think Mike used the word attainable, so it actually means there's a lot we can do, but it also means that there's no real standard for what that means. We have to define what it means for our own community and move forward that way. So thanks for bringing that up, Wade. Sorry, I did see your little hand up there, but I thought it was left over from before. So with that, I think I will close it. Again, feel free to reach out to me if you need help making connections. Jessie, Jessie @bethelmaine.com, and really appreciate your time again today. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.